Hi, y'all. I am Sean Cook, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at MailChimp, and I am a two-time Emory alum. I was 1988, Art History and Economics, 1995 at the Ghostway Business School. And so I'm so thrilled that there's so many Emory people here. It's clear that among us, we have probably funded a building over there, so you can think about that. But it's very exciting for me. First, I want to say thank you to all the people here at MailChimp for setting all this up, for making sure that audio-visual stuff works, that everybody gets in and gets fed and a beverage in their hand. There's a ton of work that goes in behind that, so thank you to all of you who've done that. To the folks at Emory who pulled this sort of thing together, it is part of what makes our community so rich and such a fulfilling thing. I've had a couple of conversations with some of you tonight, and I've talked about how Emory has influenced my life and my career in so many ways, personally and professionally, and it continues to pay dividends. And so that's something that's really meaningful for me, and I'm sure it's you too. And lastly, it dawned on me as I was getting ready for this evening and welcoming everybody, that too, it's important that if we have something like Emory that is such an anchor for Atlanta, and it puts Atlanta on the map, and I'm very proud to be a part of something like MailChimp that is also putting Atlanta on the map. It's these kinds of things that really continue to raise the visibility in the world about who Atlanta is, what we have to offer, what Emory University has to offer. And so I'm just so grateful for this community and the kinds of things that we're doing now. With that, I'm going to pass it over. We've got a terrific set of panelists. I'll turn you over to Dale, who's going to run the show for here. But thanks again and welcome.
So thank you for being here. It's great to see you. It's a pleasure to have you all here. But I need to make sure that you know I'm not part of MailChimp. I have nothing to do with that. And I'm not part of the Emory Alumni Association. I do not work for Emory. I'm just like you, though. I am an Emory alumni. And that's kind of why we're here tonight. So it's a cool venue. It's a cool place. Some cool people, great panelists. You're going to learn a lot. There's a number of reasons to be here. But let me assure you that the main reason why you should be here is because the person to your right and the person to your left needs your help. Some way, some form, or some fashion, they can benefit from what you know. So I want you to try to make sure that you get out there and get to know these individuals. We all have something in common and we're all connected. And it's unfortunate because here we are in Atlanta, and as Sean was saying, it's a great school, we have a great presence, but for some reason we just don't get out there the way that we should. And that's really the purpose of the group of Emory Over 40. You don't have to necessarily be over 40. That is a misnomer in my opinion. I'm a little bit over 40. But really what it's about the individuals that there comes a certain point in time where your issues are no longer the issues that they were when you were younger and you just graduated. Things change. And that's what we're trying to address. Trying to find those answers to help you with those concerns that you're now faced with in your personal and professional life. So we're going to host events like this more often, and I would also like to encourage you to go onto the website. I don't know the website is, just go to Safari or Google or whatever your search engine is, and just type in Emory Over 40. It will bring this website up, and that will bring you to the affinity groups and the professional groups. The affinity groups, as the name implies, are for the LGBT community, the Hispanic, women's, those kinds of affinity groups, right? So find one that may fit for you and click on that. And then there's the professional groups. We have three professional groups. The entrepreneurs group, we just had the Emory Entrepreneurs Award. We have the consulting group, so those individuals who work with companies, whether you're a management consultant or you work indirectly or directly with companies and help them be more efficient. And then we have a new group that we're starting called the Creative Group. And that Creative Group is around arts and things around the city that are not necessarily art related, but they're more creative related, if you will. Okay, so one of those three, if not all three, apply to you. So click on those. So then you have the Emory Over 40 group that's not really over that, but that's also the bigger kind of group. So if you're in the other ones, you can also be part of that, part of us, all right? So we want to see you at more of these events. And that's our whole purpose. You're going to start seeing a lot more of these things, and I want you to try to take part in them. All right? Good. We have a great panel tonight. As I mentioned, I'm delighted that y'all are here. Tom Klein and I have known each other for many years. We were classmates together, and I tell everybody that when we did our entrepreneurial project together, I was on the marketing side, he was on the finance side, and now I'm on finance and he's in marketing. So that's what Emory does for you. And then we have Alex West, and I'm going to kind of let them go through it. And Brian and Claudia Howard. So Brian Tolleson and Claudia Howard. So with that, let me turn it over to, I'm going to turn it over to Tom. Is anybody sure of what? All right. Thank you very much. Could you please join me in welcoming our panel?
I'm Tom Klein. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at MailChimp, class of '87. I was actually I studied accounting and French because I just needed to do that, and it turned out to be a good thing for me. And c'est bonjour. C'est très utile. And I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. I want to give you a little bit of sort of the lay of the land. We have a series of questions we're going to talk through, but I think what we want to make sure is we're going to cover, talk about brand building, storytelling, creativity, and how we've sort of seen it and applied it in our own careers. And at the end of our sort of panel conversation, we'll open up to questions. I think that's always a great part because I know we have lots of folks in the audience that probably are, if you're interested in the topic, we'd like to talk to you about it. I said, before I ask the panelists to kind of introduce themselves a little bit more, I'm going to ask everyone to think about one of their fondest memories at Emory. And one of mine was this thing called a move party. Does anybody remember that? Who remembers a move party? Yeah. This is before they changed the drinking age, so it's blurry memory, but it's in there. And so it was the kind of thing that was a great way to bring a lot of people together. And so without further ado, let me ask Alex, can you kick it off and tell me a little bit about your role, your fondest memory at Emory, and what do you do now?
Sure. So I got a degree in art history from Emory. So Sean and I are proof that you can do something with an art history degree. And I am the co-founder and creative director of a small consulting firm called Noir that I run with my husband. And we provide training and workshops for digital product design and development teams. He's the engineer. He handles all of the technical side. I will punt any technical questions you throw at me. I'm just going to warn you now. And I focus on teams, culture, and collaboration. And essentially, I focus on a technique whose core is about collective and collaborative storytelling. So I was really excited when I saw what the panel was about tonight. And thinking back on my fondest memory at Emory, there was a very little known, and I hope it's still there, sculpture trail that is hidden in the gully behind the Carlos Museum that my religious studies professor took us all out there and read us Shinto poetry. And I found it to be a really transformative experience. And I don't know if it's still there, but if you're on campus, go poking around. Thank you. Excellent. Go find it in the gully behind the Carlos Museum and have your own transformative experience. Highly encourage that.
Brian.
I'm Brian Tolleson. I had sort of random career since I left Emory, but all in entertainment. I sort of immediately moved to the West Coast, worked to a big company agency called CAA, then moved on to work on in the movie business, worked on a couple of Academy Award-winning movies in the development side. Then moved to New York and worked in television for many years at Viacom. Ultimately, Viacom launched Logo, the gay channel for MTV Networks, with a guy named Matt Farber and a woman named Judy McGrath. And after doing that, started this company that I've been running for the last 13 years called Bark Bark. We really focus on branded content. We help advertisers use entertainment to reach their audiences, and sort of, we do a lot of work helping define audiences and segment audiences, and then reach them with real entertainment, so that that's what we've been doing. And my fondest memory, how many of you guys started out to be pre-med? I was one of those, yeah, that was me. I ended up with a creative writing degree, a minor in biology, because they had all the credits for that. But my favorite memory was a class on proprioceptive writing that a woman named Sandra Deere, who's a pretty accomplished playwright, taught, and it was really about the process of writing, and I still actually use it today for the practice of writing. So that was really impactful for sort of how I built my career in that practice.
My name is Claudia Howard. I'll start with my Emory memory. I graduated from Emory in 2010 from Bisweta Business School. I got my MBA there. And I think grad school is slightly different than the undergrad experience, but we tried to harness that feeling when we went to Argentina. If you haven't been there, people generally are up very late at night. So we had to be in class all day because it was a trip for the business school. But we were up all night, like we were undergrad. So we basically didn't sleep for like 10 days. But I think it really speaks to the relationships, and that's, to me, my fondest memory. I still speak with some of my classmates, and I started there over 10 years ago. So, but I came to Emory from working at Turner. I worked at Turner Broadcasting for 10 years. I worked primarily on the Cartoon Network and Adult Swim brands. And then I left there. I went out to LA, like every good entertainment person does. They either go to LA or New York. And I was on the launch team for Fox Sports 1, which is now FS1. And then I came back, which a lot of people do when they go to LA too. And now I came back at the Weather Channel. And now currently I oversee integrated partner marketing, working with a lot of our tech partners, our global media partners, to really maximize our brand. We recently were acquired by IBM, so you have the Weather Channel app. We're part of IBM, and we'll talk about, I think, a little bit of that in our storytelling and how we communicate that message.
That's great. And a little bit more about my background. After I graduated from Emory, I did, as Dale alluded to, I was, because I studied accounting, I actually became a CPA, and I worked in the tax department at Arthur Anderson, RIP. And then got a business degree, and then moved into marketing after the business degree and worked at Nabisco on Cutie Cookies. So if anybody has a Teddy Graham, that's me, or it used to be me. It was at that stage I realized I was just intensely interested in the intersection of marketing and technology. So over the course of years, I've worked at places like Chanel, which is a really interesting example for storytelling. It's a very rich brand. I've done a lot of different things in the brand strategy world for places like Heineken. And so, and I've spent a lot of time at Yahoo, even like, when Yahoo was a thing. No offense to anyone if they're Yahoo or Oath or whatever it is now. But I think I was always interested in that intersection of marketing and technology. And so my current role at MailChimp is very much one of working with brand builders of all sizes, but a lot of small businesses, and trying to actually teach them both the tenets of marketing, but also this subject that we're going to talk about tonight is very near and dear to my heart, because ultimately when we talk to businesses of all sizes, the ability to stand out and differentiate yourself is the thing that means that you're, if you figure that out, you're likely to stay in business. And so to get started, I'd like to ask the panel, and Claudia, let me start with you. How do you think about the role of storytelling and creativity in your current marketing efforts?
Yes, I think for us as a company right now, we're really focused on global expansion. So in some ways, we really have to internally define for ourselves what our story is, what story we're telling here, because domestically we're a very big brand, everybody knows us. But globally, people have no idea who we are. And so I think we start by figuring out what elements of our story here translate, and then what parts do we have to build on so that we're relevant in whatever market we're going to, whether that's India or Germany or one of the South American countries. But I really think for our product specifically, we have to be really careful with creativity, right? We have to do it in a way that I think people aren't normally used to seeing, because we're also providing a life-saving service to someone. Hundreds of millions of people were on our platforms over 40 days at the end of the summer when 3 Category 4 hurricanes hit the U.S. And so I think you have to get creative in how you continue to tell that story with some nuance. Because by the 3rd storm, people were almost stormed out. You know what I'm saying? But it's a really important thing to make sure that you're clearly communicating the information that people need, but in a way that's still engaging. So a lot of times for us now, that really starts with trying to figure out the best platforms to tell that story on. And inherently, we actually did a partnership with Snapchat during the storms this fall. It's a very different thing for us than anything we've ever done. People consume information on that platform very differently than they do on TV or on their webpage. So I think it really, for us, it starts with remembering who we are at our core and being able to fuse that with what platform we're telling that story on.
Can you say more about sort of the connection with other programming or things that are, sort of things that go beyond the story of the weather itself, and more like, go deeper into other maybe content areas that you think that are important for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you'll see probably, definitely in the near future, but definitely long stream, a partnership with IBM I think is really going to help that. I think IBM is a brand with cognitive, AI, Watson, and being able to infuse those types of technologies with all the knowledge we already have about weather and location data are really going to allow us to help people make decisions for themselves. So when we look to kind of tell that story, that we can help you because we know where you are, that could look very different if you were in Atlanta in February, it's a nice day, and you go into our app and you use the TripAdvisor function, and we tell you, here are 3 different activities you can do because the weather is great. And then next weekend when it rains, we're telling you a very different story because you can't perform those same activities. So to even get people there, we're really starting to look at, of course, segmenting our audience, but breaking down every single message that we give to them to make sure if in a push notification, that story is the right story to be captured in that format. Like I said, if we're on Facebook, we have a little bit more. We can provide videos and images to help tell the story. So I think for us, it always starts with what's the core story that we're trying to tell? And then again, how does that relate to the weather? Obviously, the weather channel. But then with that information, what can you do? That's how we want to be a part of your story, helping you tell your story.
Okay. And Brian, it sounds like you work with probably a lot of different kinds of companies. You probably see that same challenge. Can you speak a little bit to sort of the things that you see common?
Yeah, we definitely don't help people save lives. Our clients sometimes think that they do, but creativity and storytelling is our whole business. That's really what we do. And I think, what we help our clients do is understand, who your audience is. Because as you tell a story, if you think about walking through a bookstore, which bookstores still do exist, there's like the nonfiction section for people who are interested in nonfiction, and there's, the kids section for, those kind of stories. And I think really understanding who your audience is and doing a deep dive, like we do a lot of work with our clients to say, okay, let's really segment your audience and create some profiles and define who your audience is. And sometimes that's aligning with a certain entertainment category, like maybe it's a sports thing or maybe it's a game show. And then also aligning with the right creative talent to deliver on that audience. Because, a lot of companies are thinking that they go to one agency or they go to one solution. And I think the challenge with that is with how, you get on Facebook now, and Facebook is for you. It is not a generic platform. It is not a channel. It is literally algorithmically designed for you. And that is becoming the level of customization that audiences expect. And we're sort of trying to match that with our creative talent and pairing the right creative with the right message.
Can you step back a little bit and talk about just sort of big picture, but like why do stories matter? Like what's all this stuff about storytelling, right? So why do they matter?
Humans connect to stories. I mean, I think there's just and we talk a lot about sort of psychology and sort of human condition in a lot of the work we do. I mean, it's sort of esoteric, but Emory helps you with that kind of esoteric background of like, let's talk about human condition. But it's true. I mean, and there's a reason why people sat around the campfire and told stories. It's because they're sticky and that sort of stays in your brain and that's something you can connect to. And we had this old model of advertising, which is these interruptive commercials, which are really just, in a lot of ways, useless today, unless they're connected to a bigger story. If you've done the right work with your brand, interruptive 30-second commercials can be helpful if they're extending a story you're already telling. But mostly that's so that people can relate and connect. I mean, that's, it's a human condition to connect to the story.
I assume you have a similar experience.
Oh yeah, well, I would totally agree with that. I mean, if you have a list of things, do you want to hear a lecture? Do you want to hear a set of directives? Or do you want to hear a story? Gather around and listen to a story. I mean, that's something that we just have the human nature to respond to. And I think one of the things that I try to do in my practice is really make everyone in the company a storyteller. I think that there's so much power in being able to get everybody's stories. There's really two sides to the coin. If you're developing a product or a brand, the more input you can have, the more diverse viewpoints and diverse stories go into that, the more appealing your product is going to be to a wider variety. The more authentic it's going to be, the more helpful it's going to be. So I think finding tools that help elicit people's stories from them, because storytelling's hard. Sometimes it's a skill. I mean, I think we all have friends that tell awful, pointless stories. We've all been there. But it's inside of all of us. And I think the flip side of that coin is that everyone in your company is your brand ambassador. And you want them to both understand your story and be able to tell that story, and not in a salesy way, in an authentic and engaging way that's something that they legitimately want to share and that they share well, and then in turn that person will share, and on and on and on.
Yeah, sometimes, if you get a bunch of marketing people to talk about segmentation, they're so down in the weeds, everyone's like, how can we talk about that? So I just wanted to back up a little bit to stories. I actually had a conversation today with someone who had a PhD in cognitive psychology, and we happened to be talking about this subject. And it was largely, hey, when you tell a story, you're sort of opening a window of understanding and a connection, and it's a way to to communicate, right? It's fundamentally a way to communicate and a way that's effective. And at MailChimp, we have a challenge of, hey, we launched a thing called, landing pages in November, and then we have an update to it, and it's very easy to fall down into sort of feature world and describe new form fields on landing pages. And okay, I don't know what either of those things are, so describing it that way is not super helpful. So the storytelling is largely what's in it for me, tell a little story about how somebody got value out of it. I mean, this is really kind of meat and potatoes, blocking and tackling sort of marketing stuff. In other words, no one's ever going to understand your benefit if you can't sort of wrap it in a story. That's been my experience.
I would agree. I would add too, it's about building a trust. I think a lot of times, particularly on the brand side, you're telling these stories in hopes of getting people to believe you, to come back, to either buy your product, use your service. Ultimately, you need their trust before you can have that relationship with them. So inherently at the core of storytelling is building a trust with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I think is really interesting is to look at the point of view of different stories. Because, and you've seen those movies where it's like the same story from different points of view. And I think as marketers, we have to think that way as well. Is like, even these big corporations, and we deal with a lot of them, are really challenged by the fact that they're navel gazing all the time and they buy their own bullshit like all day long, and they're swimming in it, right? And where I think we can be really helpful to a company is to come in and offer a fresh perspective about, that story you're telling yourself, nobody else believes it. Like to your point, like it's a trust thing. And so let's bring in some actually independent, creative people and have them really sort of start to craft your story with you. And I think that's a really important part of storytelling, is to bring in, like, don't tell yourselves the same story over and over again. Bring in outside people to help you craft your story and really understand what your story is. Because I can't tell you how many times I walk in and I'm like, everything you just said is completely bullshit. I was like, I'm just gonna love with you. And sometimes that's our last meeting with that client. But you know what? They were not a good client to work with anyway. We need brave clients and clients who are really, interested in pushing their own boundaries to tell good stories.
So Alex, we're talking about things that are very out there, right? So storytelling and creativity are like, you could have libraries filled with it. So how, in your mind, how do these connect, and how do you make them, how do they connect to each other? So if you're going to, storytelling is important for your brand and important for what you're going to communicate, how might somebody think about creativity and its role in that kind of expression?
I think if you have to challenge yourself, like Brian said, you can't just listen to your own story because you're not learning anything at that point. So I think having people tell the story from their perspective and having people listen to that within the group is what is really helpful. What I do with companies is I go in and we look at artwork together. So put a painting up and I'll say, what's going on in this picture? And then we'll sort of hear from everybody, what is the story, right? Tell me the story of this painting. And it's fascinating to me how different the stories are. And what happens is you can see everyone in the room be fascinated by these opinions that their teammates are sharing, that they maybe have never even heard this person talk. Maybe this is a person that doesn't even speak in meetings. But this is fun and non-judgmental, so they're participating. And I have chosen these artworks, and I've maybe seen them dozens of times, and without fail, somebody will say something or point something out to me that I have never seen. So I think encouraging storytelling from as many people within and without the organization as you can get, even about the same subject, is what allows you to see all those different variables and nuances and opportunities to tell the story a different way, to expand on the story, to make the story richer and more complete.
Super. Claudia, let's jump back to your brand. Right, so that was, we wanted to cover a little bit about just storytelling and creativity in general, but it's always sort of in service of either building brand equity, expanding brand equity, and I think when we talked before, you indicated that you're interested in really, whether it's, first of all, it's a category name, it's stuff that everybody deals with every day, and it's the name of, and it's your brand, and, right? So talk a little bit more about where you're taking your brand and where you might see these concepts apply.
Yeah, so I think It's a really interesting time to be at the Weather Channel. I think, we're a brand that is evolving, to your point, right? We have a ton of, and where things are going, you look at, I mentioned global expansion, the letter W doesn't exist in a lot of the places that we want to globally expand to. So what do you do? We want to go to some places and we don't actually have a TV channel there, and we're called the Weather Channel. So again, what do you do? So I think we've gone through this exercise over really the last kind of 12 to 24 months of kind of breaking our business down to its core. What's our core function? What core service do we provide for people? And then really doing the research so that you can tell the right story in the various markets where you want to be on the various platforms. Because I think one of the things that is true for any brand is that you have to tell your story. We can't try to go into a market and tell someone else's story. And to your point before, you have to be honest about that. We may have thought that monsoon season was really important in India, and we sent a full team of people there. We have people there right now, and it's come back that cricket is probably something we should be focusing on, like seriously focusing on. So things are moving around. So I think to your point, when you look at the perspective of kind of big institutional brands that everybody would know, you have to always kind of think about how you're evolving your brand and how you use your brand equity, all the stories that have been told over the years to get you to this point, to continue to move you forward and not hold you back.
Can you talk a little bit about how you measure brand equity? Okay, so if you just said, I'm in the U.S. market and I'm in India, right? And if it's your job to build brand equity, how do you know if you're succeeding?
For sure. In the simplest terms, who knows the Weather Channel? Pretty good brand equity here. I mean, that's basically what we do. We'll go out and we'll field studies. I think one thing everybody may not be aware of, that I'll just kind of throw in here quickly, is that about 2 years ago, IBM purchased the majority of the Weather Channel business. They did not purchase the TV network. So if you see the building up on 75, and like, oh, the Weather Channel's there, the TV station's there, it is not owned by IBM. We're actually two separate companies right now operating under the same brand. So it's a very interesting storytelling situation that we're currently in and evolving around. But we do field a lot of studies. We do, if anybody here has worked with a research company, Ipsos, we do a lot of Ipsos studies on brand, recognition. We'll do campaigns and then go out and see if we move the needle. Having been here, we're 90+ million homes. We bought the domain weather.com. Like you said, it's almost one. It's synonymous with the category here. It's pretty much the exact opposite everywhere else. And so those tools really kind of help us to be able to craft those stories, going out and surveying people about, one, what they want, two, what a weather service could provide for them, and three, what do you know about us already? And if you don't know much, then that helps us be able to craft the story. How can we tell you about the great things that we offer that can really help you, help drive decisions in your life so that you can move forward? You can go about your day. A lot of people here will tell you they roll over and they check the weather in the morning, and then they check in the afternoon. And if you're in Atlanta right now, it could be 4 different temperatures. Precipitation today was nuts. And so that's one way that we go about doing it.
Super. And Alex and Brian, if you think about sort of your work with your clients, are there any stories that sort of jump out at you in terms of things that have really kind of moved the meter in terms of brand equity? Like where, in terms of, so if you just said, hey, weather in India is a challenge, right? The brand is not as developed as it is in the U.S. And anything that relates to sort of content generation or storytelling that you feel like has helped in that instance, or that's a similar instance of, hey, that's a relatively new brand in a particular market, and anything that sort of jumps out at you in your background that you think might be relevant?
Yeah, I mean, we work both with existing entertainment brands, so The Walking Dead or the FX show Atlanta or whatever. We sort of help those brands crack advertiser categories. and vice versa. We bring advertisers into existing entertainment domains and allow them to play. And there was actually an article in the New York Times about this project that we did with The Walking Dead. I mean, it was season 1 of The Walking Dead, and nobody knew what it was. I mean, people saw the ratings for the first couple of episodes and knew it was going to be a huge hit. But from an advertiser perspective, it was horrible. I mean, there was like murder and blood and zombies.
It's disgusting.
Like as a marketer, like you have to, they have these like red lists, and it was on everybody's red list. Like, do not run on that show, thank you. But there was a brave guy named Sean Carver who worked at Microsoft, and he said, no, this is where we want to be. And we want you to help us figure out how to be a part of The Walking Dead. And we said, okay, well, there's no power and no internet, and you're managing the Bing brand right now. And, so it was like, how do we do internet search with that sort of, thing? But we did, we solved it, and because we had a brave client who knew their audience incredibly well and knew that the chance to move market share was related to reaching this audience. And so we did, we created a whole campaign, and it ran all season. And actually, to this day, Microsoft is still a partner. We still do different Microsoft integrations throughout The Walking Dead. I mean, you'll see it in the commercial breaks because it can't happen in the show, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think that was a place where it really moved brand equity. And they did a study afterwards, and actually, it was incredibly successful for, not that Bing has taken over the world since this happened, but, that it really moved the needle for their audience.
That's a neat example. Do you think, it sounds like confidence and creativity are kind of closely connected,
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I scare a lot of clients away. But that's a good thing, because we can only work with people who are going to be fearless in this process. And clients who've really done the work to know their audience. I mean, we can help them do this work too if they haven't already done it, but it's like, those are the two things, is like knowing who you're talking to and intimately knowing your customer or your product, or knowing, you just have to have a lot of insight. And then we can do a lot of stuff. And, as much stuff as you let us do, the bravery is key.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, because what I try to take out there in the world is a little bit outside of the box, and it's a little confusing to some people. And I've spent the past 2 years talking about this, going and lecturing about this at different conferences around the world, and without fail, every country I go to, they try to tell me why it isn't going to work there. So I was at a conference in Stockholm, and they said, Alex, Swedes are very reserved, and we know this is a participatory section, and nobody's going to talk, and nobody's going to do this, and please don't have your feelings hurt, because it's just the Swedes, it's just how we are. And everybody loved it, and everybody talked, and we had this fantastic session. And then I went and I delivered this same lecture in Bengaluru, and everybody came up to me and said, Alex, Indians don't like to speak in groups. They're very, very wary of being embarrassed in public. It's considered, just something we don't do, and people aren't going to talk, and people are going to be very quiet. You just need to not let that hurt your feelings. And we had this riotous session, and everybody participated, and it was great. And I think sometimes you just have to, if you know in your heart that what you're doing has value, you just have to let those naysayers roll right off of you, and you have to carry forward, because the proof is in the pudding. And regardless of the fact that all of these different people in all of these different countries told me why this wasn't going to work, it worked every single time.
It's funny how it is, isn't
Yeah.
it? MailChimp, we ran a campaign last year called Did You Mean MailChimp? At 9 different executions. A lot of it was really based on storytelling and creativity. The prior quarter, we had a billboard campaign that essentially was a way of kind of communicating how important we think differentiation is, right? It was a message of being yourself makes all the difference, and we used that sort of way to kind of deliver the message to our customers of, hey, look, if you're a small business person, a lot of times when you put on a marketing hat, out comes sort of salesy, horrible stuff. And what we really wanted to say was, look, you should feel free to be weird or different or funny. The being yourself part is not just it's not just good for you, it's a way to connect with other people. And you know, the more human you come across, whether that's an email or an ad or a newsletter or whatever the heck it is, you know, that's the way that you actually succeed in business. And so this combination of, hey, the storytelling is a way to kind of connect with another person, and the creativity is a little bit of a code for us of, you know, be yourself, right? And whether that's zombies eating people's faces off or something gross, right? There's a way that, you know, that sort of registers with people. So that was a really positive experience, and it was for us a way that's also instructive, because what we like to do is kind of model the behavior that we're trying to get, you know, marketers of all stripes to follow.
I think it was really interesting that you mentioned that your campaign did, which I think is the next most successful brands will be the brands that inspire storytelling and creativity in their customers or their consumers. And that, I mean, that's where the real future is. You know, when we get into the VR world and you know, stories are interactive and we're really living in this sort of story-driven universe that you control, the brands that can crack that code are going to be very successful. I don't even know what that means, but I do think that is true. Is that, I mean, if you look at Apple, I mean, Apple is the world's most successful brand, and most of what they do is empower people to be creative and to tell stories, right? I mean, from the texting emojis to the, you know, I haven't done the face thing yet, but like, you know, like, but that's what they're doing. And so, as marketers, we have to look for those opportunities too.
So how do you weigh, like, you know, there's a lot of, you know, you can be enamored with brand building and storytelling, but then there's like, the wolf is at the door, right? I mean, you have to deliver some numbers, and things actually have to happen and change, and you have to drive revenue. So how do you weigh sort of the demands on your business, or how do you see, you know, sort of successful clients do the same thing of like, hey, I can't be out there brand building, and meanwhile there's no revenue, right? So that doesn't work either. So Claudia, can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, it's funny. We just had, you know, our kind of beginning of the year offsite around this very topic, because, you know, brand building is a long game. But every quarter finance wants to see the numbers at least where they thought they would be, and generally speaking above that. I mean, being honest, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. I think particularly in this world, in the digital world, it's to a certain extent hurt brand building, because you can be so efficient in how you buy and tell such specific stories and prove ROI on that, that you could shoot yourself in the foot as a marketer and not be able to get the money you need to tell the brand story. So I think if you really want to be successful at it, you know, as a brand or even as an individual, you have to really be committed to looking at both. You know, it has to be a 50-50 split. You can't sacrifice one for the other. Or if you do, you have to know that that is a sacrifice. If you take any money or any time away from the long-term brand building, that's going to hurt you in the end. And you've seen that happen with brands. I recently was reading an ad age, you know, Procter & Gamble slashing $140 million. As a marketer, like $140 million, that's so much money, but they're just slashing that from digital because they know that they have to continue to build these brands. They have products that, generally speaking, are hereditary products. You use Tide because your mom used Tide. You know what I'm saying? They've got to build stories behind their brands because this generation just doesn't operate that way. So I think you really, really have to be careful, and you have to have leadership that's really committed to not sacrificing your long-term growth for your short-term gain. And it's a hard thing to do. We all fall into it. But I think when you're really committed to it, it works out for your brand.
So it's not just delivering stories more efficiently?
It's not.
No.
It's not.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
I think there's a connection, right? But I think the efficient stories that you are delivering, again, to everything we talked about, if they build trust, if they really tell your truths, ultimately they're helping you to build your brand. But you have to remember that in the short term, that it's always a long game. You know, you want your business to be there for the long term.
And it's very easy from someone on the outside to, you know, resist all of that analytical aspect of it. And, you know, because efficiency is the enemy of creativity. It really is. And so when you get really data-driven and really process-driven and really, you know, corporate, I mean, we need these corporations to do this so we can actually afford to make great stories, right? But working in that environment is very hard because it is a long game. And our brave clients really work within their organizations to explain to people that we may not be able to say that being part of, you know, this particular thing is going to make an ROI in this particular format. But we are going to come up with a strategy to analyze the halo effect of this thing. And that's really having not just brave clients, but smart clients, because who can say, this is not going to show up on a click-through report, but this will show up in this version of things, you know, and they could be wrong. And, you know, I think we've also lost the ability to let marketing people make mistakes, and because that's what being brave is about too.
Yeah, it's definitely it's sort of the marketer's burden,
Yeah.
you know, of today. You know, how do I think long-term and short-term? I mean, ruthlessly short-term, right? At the same time as...
Week to week.
Yeah.
Literally, there have been times where we've been like, what can we do today to drive this number? I'm like, well, there are 2 or 3 things we could do. To your point, it's at the cost of something.
Well, so do you see, one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is, you know, we're a marketing automation platform, and so a lot of what we try to communicate to our customers is, hey, you know, there's a lot that the machine can do, right? How do you actually craft what feels like, what is a nice experience and more personalized for customers, but do things that, in other words, not make efficiency the enemy of brand building, right? So it's sort of like how to thread that needle of, look, there's a lot of automation out there that'll deliver things and deliver messages based on either triggers or behaviors or what have you. And a lot of times people feel like they struggle with how do I just put my mind in what I'm doing and be a real person and connect with the other person who's going to receive or see that thing, whatever it is, whether it's a video snippet or whatever the marketing thing is. And so a lot of what we're looking to do is say, hey, robots can figure out where the stuff goes, right? And if you really put your heart into making things that you feel are fundamentally good for your customers, right? They're helpful. For us, they're helpful, they're creative, they're beautiful, they're inspiring, and you just feel good about making it. A lot of what's happened in the world of the internet is just like, you're right, it's ruthlessly efficient, but the machine can tell you which of the X million people should see this thing versus that thing, right? And a lot of that message is, hey, use marketing automation, use the efficient stuff, you know, to open up a window so that you can be more creative. You can tell your stories. Any signs of that? Am I just smoking something?
How quickly, one that came out today, I don't know if anybody saw it, right? Automation today drove videos to the top of YouTube that said that the Parkland students were hackers, right? Wrong thing. It should not happen. YouTube doesn't have anybody, a human in place to stop the machine. That example has happened time and time and again. And I think from a marketing perspective, that will hurt you. There were brands, I'm sure, that were running in those videos that were not happy about that. YouTube had to come out and make a statement. Generally, when a statement is made, somebody's really upset versus just the error being corrected. So I think, you know, that to me is the most extreme, sensitive type of situation, but that happens with brands day in and day out. What I try to communicate, and I've said this at other panels, is it should be an enhancement. The AI, the automation should be an enhancement. It should allow us to work better, to work smarter, potentially give us more options. But there are certain things that when you get back to the core storytelling, only a human can communicate or stop, or say in a way that really helps push things along.
And I also think it's about having a core, simple story that everything else is built off of. My husband is like an amazing interior decorator. Not all gays are, he's one of the guys. And, somebody asked him, like, what is your secret? He's like, okay, I have one secret. He's like, I'll pick one thing, like a pillow or a rug or whatever it is, and then everything comes off of that. And that's, if you're a brand and you want everything in the room to look good, no matter if it's automated or whatever, if you pick the rug and everybody agrees that we're going to use this rug to inspire everything, then I think you can do those things. You can answer, because you've got a core story that everybody's bought into. And everybody's contributed to it. I know a lot of that work that Alex does is getting, the guy in accounting to contribute to that core story. And, a lot of companies overlook this, and they spend zero time on their own story for themselves and who they want to be and who they are, and explaining that to their employees and have their employees say it back to them. But that's really important, to sort of having a core story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to know your story if you're going to be able to tell it successfully. You can't have any doubt in your mind what your story is. And I do think empowering your employees to be able to tell that story is really important, because they are your salespeople, they're your recruiters, they are the face of the public. And I think people forget that a lot. And Dale Carnegie said, people support a world they help create. So when you bring people into the process and they feel as though they are part of the story and they're part of the narrative, they are going to be more inclined to help push that forward. And they're going to want to tell that story to other people, and they're going to want to share it because it's their story.
Yeah, I think this is fascinating. It's a fascinating subject for me. I feel like it's something I sort of swim in all the time. So I'd love for y'all to just think about one last piece of advice. If you'd say, as it relates to brand building, we've got a lot of folks that probably are in marketing or marketing-related fields. If you could just sort of think about what is the piece of brand building advice you might give, whether it's related to how do you actually get people to participate in storytelling, right? Or how do you choose content that's the most compelling, or how are you going to be successful in India? If you could just sort of provide one piece of advice.
We're working on that story right now.
Okay, and then we'll do Q&A, but I'm mindful of our time constraint.
I think it's just really important to figure out a way to, whatever those opportunities are, to get everyone involved in both the creation of the story and the telling of the story. The more you can have teams interact with one another, marketing shouldn't be the only people that write and tell the story. Developers need to tell the story, testers need to tell the story. Everybody needs to be involved and feel ownership and feel a sense of pride and a desire to share that, and a sense of excitement. I think that's really the key, is to just remove it from thinking that it's a sales and a marketing situation, because it is, and it's a company-wide mandate.
My advice to everybody is to reach outside of your own stale air and reach out to professional creative people. The most professional creative people that you can afford. If you can afford Jennifer Lopez, give me a call. But if college students aren't great creative partners. You know what I mean? Go for as proven and, because being a creative is also, you wouldn't go to a doctor who's still in college, right? If you had appendicitis or whatever. To go to the best creative team you can afford and get outside of your box. Don't make the mistake that Pepsi made with the, horrible Caitlyn Jenner campaign they did this year, which was them breathing their own air inside their own box with their own hired creative team that lived in-house at Pepsi. That is the danger that you risk by not going outside.
If I was going to be similar, I was going to say, remember who you are, write your story, and then make sure that truly is your story. Ask around internally, make sure people understand it, and feel that is right for your brand. And then ask your customers. We live in a day and age where everybody contributes. You know, they shouldn't write the story, but they're a part of the story. So I think you have to involve everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to point out on these steps here, it says listen hard and change fast. And that's our internal motto. So even when it comes to storytelling, wow, there's a fast feedback loop. Of the moment anybody's unhappy with anything, or you've said it the wrong way, or anything, you're going to hear about it. And that's part of the great thing about social media is you can change, you can adjust, you can explain. Right? So it's really kind of a wonderful thing. I'd like to thank you all for participating in the panel. And I'd like to let everybody know we do have, we can do questions and answers. If anybody has a question. So that's this thing.
Is this on yet?
That's on.
So this is the magic monkey box.
You can just throw it at people. You can walk it up there, too.
Let's start right here.
Hello. I have a question. I've been thinking about this environment. I'd love to know your story behind the names of your businesses. Like, why, like, also why Bartberg? What is that story? How does it relate to your business? And how does it, differentiate you to tell the world who you are as a company in the right now?
Well, I can take zero credit for because my Nerd Noir was 100% my husband's device. He said, I'm 50% nerd, I'm 50% noir. And at first I didn't get it. I didn't really like it, to be honest. But eventually you won me over. Our core values of our company are people, creativity, and results. So we're really trying to take a holistic approach to digital product design. It's not about coding, it's about human experience, right? If you're trying to make a product that people are going to be excited about, whether that's an application or a physical product, you have to think about people and how they're going to use it, and you have to be creative, and you have to solve a problem or bring them joy or surprise them. So, the 50% nerd, 50% noir, he also really loves detectives. In case you hadn't figured that out. But it really did kind of sum up our approach in that it's not just about the science and the engineering, it's really about a little bit of mystery and magic and people.
For Bartberg, I mean, we wanted to be infinitely searchable on Google, so check. But we also wanted to be a place that people could bring their dogs every day. But when we got over like 30 people, it was like chaos. It was like, the next guy would come and he would so scared. So we now have one dog who sort of represents all dogs who comes to the and yeah, so that's so.
If you ask one of our co-founders, he would say chimp mail was not available.
Who's next?
So you alluded to it at the end, but I was curious, especially after you talked about Apple and how they're, not everybody's taking their iPhone and making the next great symphony. So what's the relationship to truth to story?
In that for what?
Your truth and your story is important. Like if Apple is marketing themselves as all these creative people who are taking their products and making something amazing, well, it's not true. So what is the relationship to this?
I do think Apple is, people are using their iPhones to make symphonies, and I think.
But
I think Snapchat, you're too old to use Snapchat. And I'm too old to use Snapchat, but there is an entire generation of people who are being created every second of every day, creating on that. Whether, and they have all these like constructed personalities, which that's a whole other problem. But, Instagram is literally built for the iPhone. It wouldn't happen without the iPhone. Apple is empowering that creativity all day, every day, and storytelling. Because every Instagram photo of this whole generation of people who are quickly taking over, that's their world. And so I do think that that's true. But truth to your story is really important. And we call bullshit on clients all the time. They really don't like it, and some of them hate me. But, you know, that truth in that mirror, holding out that mirror and being like, look, you really don't look like you think you look, you know, and let's go from there.
I think that's an interesting question about the difference between storytelling and telling a story, whatever. Like, we're held to a very high standard because everybody's, you know, again, it's social media, the BS meter is on for everything. And so I think a lot of times our challenge is just not only thinking about the first order implication of what we say, but also the fact that almost every time we say anything, it's going to be repeated by somebody and truncated somehow. And so things that feel like little things, we'll have things that happen in social media that feel like this is a non-event. Somebody chops half of the thing off and then it becomes a cataclysm of some sort, right? And so it's understanding, you know, what's the, you know, the telephone, modern version of the telephone game going to feel like out there? And I think that's particularly hard. And I think because of that, that drives the desire probably for more control and more cohesiveness. And so, you know, you don't necessarily want, you know, text isn't always your friend, right? So if you put everything into a video form, there's certain forms that are friendlier to just saying, this is the only way you're going to get it. You can't be sort of annotated or changed.
Tom, our next question is up in the balcony.
Thanks, Dale.
Hello, and I'd like to quickly say I have a 13-year-old, whether I sanction it or not. She's on Snapchat. Mine is school time, so she's reading every second of the day. But question around, I think earlier, one of the panels spoke about the Walking Dead show and trying to create a story around something that was unfamiliar for an audience. So I have a product and a company that has a negative connotation around it in the United States. It's an insect protein food company. And so how do you create a story around creating magic around something that is new and unfamiliar to a market, and creating a story that resonates with people in an emerging market?
Yeah, I don't know all the answers, but I know that one. You know, we actually have a great platform for your product. It's called the Food Network Fantasy Kitchen, which is launching very soon. So we created a whole content platform for advertisers to integrate into. And, you know, food entertainment has so many legs and opportunities to it. You know, we've even developed original series for particular food sponsors or for particular food brands, or even, you know, like the egg board, or, you know, whoever it is. And I think it's really ripe for content, you know, and expertise. I know what Weather does has a lot to do with talent and expertise, and I think that's a real great idea for that brand, is to really find a food talent. And it could just be a social influencer. We use social influencers a lot in the work that we do. And it's sort of one of those overused buzzwords, but basically anybody who has a following of people on some platform to engage with and have them bring their creativity to your product. I mean, chefs are amazing creative partners, and they can come up with things. I mean, we've created partnerships on Food Network where literally a chef helped them crack a whole other market because the chef figured out another way to use the product. So they can be a great partner, like you're telling me. You guys have talent.
I do. Yeah, I would agree. I think too, once you know your story, figuring out the best way to communicate it is really important, right? So I'm not 100% sure what the product is, but thinking about products like that in the past, sometimes they use humor, right, to tell that story, because it seems like that's the last thing that you would want to do to tell that story, but it cuts through because you're trying to compete against everything else that we're working against. So I think you have to work with a partner, to Ryan's point, you know, people who do this day in and day out, to figure out the best way to actually communicate the story. Because part of that is making sure you tell the story in the right way. You know, there are brands that fail every day with the best product on the market. They just didn't tell people about it in the right fashion.
Makes me think about that lady in Keister, Wisconsin or something.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I won't go with that. What's next, Dale?
Any more questions? Anybody else?
like the squatty potty thing. I just think
Oh, that's
it's so good. It's so good.
Well, Tom and panelists, thank you very much. We'll give them another big round of applause. Thanks for helping us out, giving us some good insight on what y'all do. I'm talking into this box.
You have a microphone in the other
I
hand.
think it's kind of cool, so.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much. We don't have much time left, but try to meet a few other people while you're here. Come talk to me if you're interested about being over 40 and getting involved there. And please, the panelists will be here for a few more minutes, so be sure to talk to them. If you have not checked out, at least check out the website. It is cool stuff. Thank you for coming, everybody.